Hello, Christian Network. Today we're going to have a super exciting story for you regarding Jesus and the fact that he has already returned, and that all of this hidden history, such as you are seeing on the screen right here, where there was all of this magnificent buildings, these structures, technology, everything existed, and someone came along from the late 1800s to the middle 1900s, 1930s and 40s, and they burnt it all up and they destroyed it. And what I'm going to present to you today is that they told us these things were built during a time period when there was nothing but horse and buggy, that there were no mechanical structures to say of. President Abraham Lincoln lived in a log cabin, and they had horses and steam engines at best to build these things. When we see these structures and we realize that they are actually something that was built far earlier than we're being told. Let's begin our journey now. This is part of the White House, and I want you to look at something here. They say the White House was all burnt down. It was built in the 1700s, sometime right after we just came out of a Revolutionary War. The country was poor. We didn't have much infrastructure going on yet, trying to get started, and yet we have this building, and maybe we'll see in pictures that they had the technology during the 1700s to dig football fields of basement area through rock and all kinds of mud and things, going down deep, deep, deep underground. With a time like this, who supported all the workers? What did they do to live? Look at this here now. What you will see here is evidence of what we call mud flood. You see this area, this red line going across here? That is ground level. But as they began renovating, as they began digging out this structure, what do you see? Look at these windows. The windows, maybe I'll increase it for you. See these windows? They were buried. All of this stuff underground here, that was buried. So what we're looking at as we examine all this is infrastructure. Look at all this underground that existed. It was buried under something that is called mud flood. You should look into this. We cover it in the book Reason to Believe. This mud flood in this structure all came about. Look at over here. What is all this doing buried underground? And this goes way, way, way deep underground. It was buried. The White House, they claim being built at a certain time, it was already there. This structure had been there. It was just reclaimed, repurposed, and given different names. All of these structures, as you see here, these grand, magnificent, gigantic structures, all had the same exact Romanesque design to them all over the world. Melbourne, Chicago, Winnipeg, right? What's going on where you have all across the world the same exact Romanesque style infrastructure? Do you want to know what's going on? What's going on is the theory and the strict idea, I believe, of Pangea, the continents that were all connected. Have you ever seen a map of California from the 1700s? I bet you haven't seen it. They never taught it in school. California was an island. That's right. Have you ever seen these pictures like this on the side of mountains where there are buildings that go inside of them? Why did that happen? When you read in the book of Revelation, and it talks about the mountains and buildings and melting like molten glass. So you see, guys, the whole infrastructure, except for the very last return of Christ and the great war where God destroys the invading armies trying to come against the camp of the saints, all of the book of Revelation has already taken place. Nero was the Antichrist, the against Christ. Don't you get it? Go back. In the Geneva Bibles, do you understand that the Geneva Bible, the footnotes, not the King James version that we have now, but the Geneva Bible wrote in there that all of the things, the footnotes of it, the things of the book of Revelation, and that they had already taken place. For 2,000 years, nobody believed that Israel was supposed to become a nation again. That's absolutely ridiculous. Israel was destroyed. The covenant was broke. They rejected Christ. And Israel became those who believed, the Christians, and the very tiny, minute group of Jews, which is almost minuscule. So this formation of this Israel project, or these things going on to, that they've duped us into, it's all been manufactured, guys. All of this is just a creation, a modern event. So add a little light here so we can see a little better. Okay. So let's move on as we take a look. Here is more melted. Do you see this here? This This building, all of this, more building up here, that's a melted city, in case you didn't quite understand what's going on here. You see, all of these infrastructures somebody didn't come with chisels in the old days back then and chisel all of this out. Okay. At best, somebody came with some mud and formed the front, but boy, it goes way deep into the mountains. It goes way underground in these tunnels that go all around the world. These cities you see from the air, these are massive buildings, massive structures. And we're supposed to believe all of this stuff ended up on the top of a mountain for no reason. Look at this here. Do you see this? This is like up on a mountain-like structure. What is the point of this when you can't get to it? Nobody's going to climb this mountain to do this. Do you understand? This was here, and this infrastructure, the rest of the building and such, melted. You see, Jesus told the people standing there before him that some of you standing here will not pass away before you see the return of the Son of Man. In the book of Revelation, you read, it says, "Come quickly, Lord Jesus." Here's what we need to know for a fact that people don't understand. That the books of the Bible, what you hold in your hand, reading the Bible, were for the last part of the New Testament. The New Testament was a group of letters written to the church to give them instructions on how to behave and conduct themselves during the time, the end of those days, the destruction to come before Christ returned for the millennial reign. The Geneva Bible said, as people believe for 2,000 years after Christ, that it already happened. Now, this is where we get into the massive cover-up. That is the formation of Israel, the release of the Scofield Bible, and the false teaching paid for by the Rothschilds, who also funded the start of Israel. They paid for this book called the Scofield Bible. The Scofield Bible was a man named Scofield was attached to this Bible. He was a false lawyer who got caught, arrested, and went to prison. And when he came out, he decided to be a preacher. When he decided to be a preacher, he was then assigned the title of being the author of this Scofield Bible, but it was really endorsed, influenced by the Rothschilds. This book was then, they also owned the Oxford Press. They made sure this Bible got printed by the thousands and thousands, and they had it put in all of the seminary schools to train young pastors that this is the truth, that Israel is going to come back again, and it's going to be the fulfillment of prophecy. And all. Nobody believed this for 2,000 years. It's new. We're catching on to it. We noticed, and now we realize all of this stuff, these buried and ruined cities, we cannot explain how they were created. There is not enough. You cannot get horses. It takes some of these buildings to manufacture them would take 300 gallons of water a day just for the horses moving things around. The stone, the architecture, the craftsmanship to build these cities, which you see rubble laying around because starting in the late 1800s, they began bombing them, burning them, destroying them. I found evidence that there were individuals who were hired as arson crews. I found their outfits and their badges, and their job was to burn down these old cities. And what you see in these pictures a lot of times now is something that occurred called the mud flood, where we cannot explain how all of the buildings they claim that were founded, notice the word founded in the 1800s to 1890s, how the roadway sits at one level. But what's really going on is there is 1, 2, 3 levels, 3 stories buried underground. You cannot see. So they stuck these labels on there called these things called foundation blocks or cornerstones, and they're not. They removed a stone, and then what they did is just place something on there that said founded in a certain time, 1893, and then they write a fake backstory behind it. When you go to investigate, you can find no pictures of you find scaffolding, but you can't find pictures of scaffolding and supposing these faked pictures of people working on these buildings. There's no plans, no architecture, no recorded permits to build the buildings. So you see things like this, like in Petra and different places. You see what looks like somebody coming along with a bunch of chisels and carving these things out of stone. Well, let's imagine there was a huge mud flood or the catastrophic event like the melting of the mountains and cities like molten glass and this molten structures, and people came in and dug out the structures that already existed. When you go to Jordan, when you go to look at these places, they always show you just a couple images of them. But in reality, it's an entire city where the buildings and the mountains around it, and they're all melted as if they're like candles. Now, here again is the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. And as you can see this here, see this level? This is ground level. And you mean to tell me in the late 1700s or the early 1800s, this is just a portion of the building, that they had shovels and dug and this isn't even to the bottom yet, dug all of this out with shovels after these revolutionary wars where people were starving and the nation's just trying to get started. How did these massive buildings, and why is it that this matches all the Romanesque buildings all over the world? Do you know there's Capitol buildings in every state that look like this? These Capitol buildings, like in DC, who built those? Sometimes there was only 2,500 people living in a section of a city or a place, no rail cars going there. And yet they claim they built these buildings, right? How did they build these Capitol buildings with ornate marble and huge domes and steel? And they didn't even have the infrastructure. They didn't even have these things, these cars like this. They had horses, buggies, and shovels and pickaxes. And they tell us they built these. As you can see here, see this was ground level? Now this is dug out around these buildings. Do you see this? How deep it goes? They're not even to the foundation of it yet. And yet you'd walk around thinking this area here, all this area up here, is the actual ground level of these buildings. And they'll tell you a backstory about it, that this was built in 1803 or 1902. And they're lying. They know it's not. This is the deception that came along at some point in time where they began hiding the millennial reign of Christ. Sometime in the late 1700s, they began to hide all of this buried buildings underground, far underground. What buried the entire world? What cataclysm after Jesus and the saints left to go to the northern country in this place called the Camp of the Saints you read in the Bible? What is the mystery? The old maps, you know, it's on the old maps in the farthernmost northern land that was not covered in ice in that time. In the old maps, it's called Land of Jesus. Look it up and find it. These old maps said Land of Jesus. Isn't that odd to name the North Pole region area Land of Jesus? And why is it so strange when you go on Google Maps or Google Earth that this area is all blurred out? And all the old maps show like this thing called black rock in the middle and these continents around it, and it's not there now. These people who sailed around the world in these ships, who created these maps, were made to think that they're totally stupid and ignorant. Well, there's a whole lot more to these stories going on, a whole lot more to this hidden evidence that Jesus actually returned and some cataclysm took place and buried this place in what's called a mud flood, hiding the evidence. And what wasn't buried, they began to cover up. Take a look at this. See this here, this ground level here, these buildings? What is buried this building in that much dirt? Look at it. Weird, right? 2nd Street between Delaware and Main Street. In 1869, the Mechanics Bank building is on the left. Tell me that something didn't happen recently and they hid it from us. It's not in our books. You know, public school didn't come along till quite later on. And when you follow the path, when you follow what happened with public school, what really set it all up, again, you can track it to the Rothschilds and a foundation, and they passed that down to the Rockefeller Foundation. All of our public school system has been designed by the controllers and the hiders of our past. Whatever satanic agenda they have to hide it, they have hidden our history to do it because the buildings don't lie. This right here, if you were sitting in science class, see this bottom portion here and look at the top portion of a temple. Do you see this? This is melted buildings, but they would tell you it's some kind of natural formation. Well, when you're 8 and 10 years old, well, you trust your teachers. But when you're an adult, you see that this is quite a joke in itself. Now, take a look at these places here. All over the world, you have these structures, just like in the USA, where they tell us that somebody came along, these primitive Indians and whoever they might be, and chiseled this stuff out into the side of mountains. That doesn't make any sense when you're talking about people who, like in the USA, they didn't even have horses supposedly till later on. And these people are chiseling out this stuff out of the side of a mountain. Well, why is it all over the world like this? Look in Peru here. I'm telling you, when you look at this site in Peru, Doesn't it look mostly like this melted all around it? And this is just the exposed section? I think so. So this is here another great example of mud flood. Take a look at the street level before they came in to put some pipes in and do other stuff. This was where you'd be walking around believing that this is the level the buildings are built at. Look how far down it goes and keeps going. A lot of these buildings, you're walking around seeing they'll have a plaque somewhere up in the top portion up here that will say founded at a certain time. What's the reality about it? See this around here? Let me see if I can get my finger. Anyway, these structures here, they'll have plaques at this level up here where the doors are. These are the doors where you go in, say, tricking you, saying it was founded. And really, the street, you go way down here where these men are standing, the old street was way down there. That's not from sediment forming over time. So here again, here's Delaware Street, looking south from onto these old buildings. Do you see all this dirt all the way up? I don't know how much it is, 50, 60 foot of dirt that was just all of a sudden. There's no cataclysm in our modern day records. We have detailed information about the Civil War. Don't you think that a cataclysm that buried cities, that would have buried all of the crops and farmland, would have killed off most of the population, that somebody might have wrote about it? Well, if you don't want somebody to find out about it, you write that out of history, don't you? If you don't want people to realize that Jesus already returned and you're hiding the millennial kingdom, and the Bible literally said that those people standing there with Jesus would not taste death till they saw him return, and that Nero was actually the Antichrist, and the Bible was not written to us 2,000 years later, but was written to them about the events about to happen, and that all of this was orchestrated by a Jewish-run propaganda machine to get Christians to fall for funding an organization in a country that has literally been against Christians for 2,000 years. Ingenious, but we're noticing. We've woke up. The Geneva Bible says that already happened. Maybe we were propagandized. Take a look at these buildings all over around the world. Look at this, structures buried. How did all this, there's a whole entire city underground here. Don't you find that strange? What are all of these here statues buried underground they're finding? You might be walking over top of one right now where the old city used to be. Look at the level of the dirt around these buildings. They're all buried. And it wasn't that long ago. Our timeline, there is a Russian mathematician, I believe Anatoly Fomenko, brilliant, one of their top mathematicians, and he has proven that our history and our history books has all been manufactured. In fact, rewritten to where they state the same stories over and over and just change the names, and that they may have added 700 to 1,000 years to our timeline. Interesting. Math doesn't lie, guys. Take a look at it buried. Look at the cities, how deep these guys are trying to dig out between them. What? Look, there's a chimney-like structure here. What buried everything recently? Do you understand? What buried these things recently? What is going on here? Is this written in your history book? Did you ever learn about these cities? Did you ever see any of this stuff? Look at the inside of these buildings. Supposedly, let's take a closer look for you. Are you telling me that this building was built with chisels and primitive tools and ox carts and wagons and shovels? Look at the size of the people and look at the ornateness. Look how tall. Guys, it was the saints, the resurrected men and women during the millennial reign of Christ with supernatural bodies and abilities, and angels built these things. And it was buried, and they hid it from us because we're living in Satan's short season. See the melt? This is all melted around these buildings. Revelation already took place. You mean to tell me that this isn't an actual bridge? This is a natural formation here? They tell us that this just naturally formed? That's a melted bridge, guys. How did this castle melt? Right? Who built this? What was the technology they had? They didn't have cranes. Look at it. Could you even sit down with all your college education and even get remotely close to designing anything with this? How did they do it? With horse and buggy technology. Supposedly they didn't even have paper. Look at this places. Look at this. Now they tell us in our history books too. You see this? They tell us that this is a natural formation. I would say, from what I know so far, this is a melted city, perhaps even pre-flood. Look at it. You think that's natural? How about this? When they dig out, you think that this was the level of the street. See the buildings to the left? You think that, but really, look how tall it actually was before it was buried. Oh, how they've deceived us about so much. Does this building look like it was built with putt-putt cars or horse and wagon back in the old days? I think you need to take a look at inside of these things to really get the grand idea of the infrastructures. That's right. Look at this. Supposedly they told us that this was built in a year or two. All of this right here, just for people to come and ride around in a boat around. No, guys, this was here. This was America, and this was here before the settlers got here. There were people living here, and whatever happened to them and wherever they went, perhaps the camp of the saints, they built this stuff. And they were something more than we are. Look at these structures. You mean to tell me that's paper mache and plaster? And they'd go through all that work, far more complex than Disneyland, and then tear it down in a couple of years? I'm not that stupid anymore. Look at this. Get close. Look at this. Nope, we're not buying it anymore. Guys, what they've been teaching you in church about Israel being the apple of God's eye and all this chosen people stuff, that is part of Satan's great deception. To reinstall anyone who denies Christ and get Christians to fund and pay for it. That's the whole point of it. That's the whole revenge. Don't you get it? That's the revenge against Christ, to get his followers to fund what the book of Revelation said about, if possible, even the elect would be deceived. And that has to do, look at this, that has to do with tricking Christians to believe that Jesus didn't already return. And during his 1,000-year reign, that's when this stuff was built with heavenly technology, with people who had bodies physically capable of doing far more than we can do. Look, here's a melted building with just part exposed. Ever wondered how a enormous castle got on top of a cliff? Yeah, you think they hauled every one of those bricks and all that stuff up there with a rope and a pulley? I don't think so. Here's another example. How did the rocks melt over top like this? How did the rocks melt into and over top of the bricks? Some of these buildings you think are new are way older than you think. Well, let's see. I think that might be all of my image. We're getting into some other stuff now. Don't really need to look at. So I thought this was great. Who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past. You see these buildings? They were here long before the writers of our history came along. We are in Satan's short season, a time of deception. But guys, we're beginning to notice. The time is up. The Scofield Bible, the Israel is the apple of God's eye, chosen people timeline, that's over. The Epstein files were released. We see who was running all of the stuff, just like when we read in the Bible about the time of exile into Babylon, because we found that those who were supposed to be sharing the word of God to the world ended up turning away and worshiping Molech. And they had the star of Remphan, which you find on the flag today. And that star of Remphan and Molech was a symbol, and they were sacrificing their children to Molech. And now we're finding the Epstein files released. And what are we finding happening now? All of this child stuff, all of this reports of tens of thousands They say even up to 900 people go missing in the United States every hour. Who's taking them? Where are they going? Satan's short season. Guys, there are people, physical men and women, working for him to cover all this up. Satan is not omnipresent like God. We need to realize what's happening so that we can save our countries from this. The Scofield Bible, the whole Night to Honor Israel, Pastor Hagee jargon, that's all exposed now. All the paid off actors, they're right now running programs where they're taking new pastors, some of the older ones, out of seminary schools or out of their churches. They're flying them to Israel to indoctrinate them into this program to bring back and start calling everybody who's not following this fake timeline antiseptic. And the pastors are being paid off, shekels in their pocket, to teach this message and to win over, just like the whole TPUSA thing going on. You had Charlie Kirk start to expose it, correct? And then what happened? Charlie Kirk goes away and it's right back to business as usual with their billionaire donors. There is a war going on between the Catholic Church and Israel to see who can win over the Protestant Church long enough for them to keep infiltrating their countries with these Islamic migrants and these not high-level Islamic people, but low-level, non-skilled people flooding the country with them, because Israel knows how to control these people. As we can see, it's all about erasing and revenge on Christ. And that's what the Scofield Bible was about. That's what the teachings in the church were about. And that's what the unity with Israel was all about, to get God's children to be fooled and be the ones in the Bible where it says even the elect, if possible, would be deceived. There's no greater event taking place in the world than this event to match that scripture. If you've got a friend, you've got somebody who is still stuck in this mindset, mostly a lot of older people. I was stuck in it, but I'm out now and I realize it's time to come back to Christ. It's time to realize all of this stuff happened. They hid history. They invented the school systems to teach us a bunch of crud so that we would stay blind most of our life. And then when we start to wake up at all, to enslave us in debt, to enslave us in mortgage payments, to enslave us with grocery prices, just like they did in Nazi Germany. And when I say Nazi Germany, I really mean the Weimar Republic that led to Nazi Germany was a free time for Germany. The Weimar Republic was when the deceptive time took over. They did it to the former Soviet Union. And if you look about who really manufactured that and look up who killed 50 million Christians, who was behind it, who orchestrated the killing of all those Christians in the Soviet Union. It's the same people behind hiding the millennial reign of Christ. I say this with evidence backing it. Guys, if you want to know, if you never want to be fooled again by all of this, if you want to understand how all this works, how all the hiding, the mechanisms of secret societies, everything that has deceived you and kept you hidden, restricted your life, and caused you to believe a lie, and you don't want to go to your grave believing a lie, get the book Reason to Believe. It goes in depth, beyond a reasonable doubt, that this evidence I'm talking about is true. If you don't have this book, if you've never read it at least once, you're going to go to your grave reading many history books constructed as a lie. You're going to believe the great lie. Get the book Reason to Believe. It has evidence and information that was scrubbed from the internet. It was gathered and written before they scrubbed the evidence. If you're a Protestant Christian, if you're a Catholic, you need to read this book. If you don't believe in God at all, you need to read this book, because I believe it will change the way you view the information that you have based your entire life off. You will become one of the elect, one of the minute people in the earth who actually really understands how it all works, what's going on, and what happened to us. Not everybody's going to read it. and not everybody even wants to know. But if you want to know, you want to get out of the matrix, get this book. I'm going to leave 2 links for you. One is a paperback you can buy on Amazon. And if you want a little more affordable version, then I'll leave an ebook for you where you can click on and get the ebook. The ebook is cool because you can take the pictures or the quotes, the information, and copy and paste it places as evidence for what is going on. Thanks, guys. This is Dan from the Christian Network. I hope you have trusted me for this little story and this walkthrough here. I think it's pretty cool. And I also think waking up and understanding and having this knowledge is the best thing you can do in life. Thank you. God bless you. And may you be awake to what's going on.